Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Coaching Call podcast. On this podcast, we'll cover various types of coaching by trainers in sports, martial arts, fitness, and business. We'll discuss each coach's methods to getting the most out of their respective athletes or clients and how they attempt to change the platform in which they coach. Join us on a fun adventure as we discuss unique coaching styles. Coaching is a universal part of how we get others to get something done. Join your host, Raphael, and his guests on this unique journey in coaching.
Hi, I'm Sifu Raphael, and this is the Coaching Call podcast. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. This episode was made possible by listeners like you. Good morning. I have my guest, and he's having technical difficulties. So let me tell you a little bit about Blaine Oelkers, who happens to be America's only, listen to this, only Chief Results Officer. He's always loved to help people get results and knows which habits bring success and results. How to create instantly and stick with a lifetime of results, right? He's a leading authority in personal implementation and consistency. I love this one the best. He's a habit master with documented streak of 1,453 days in a row and counting. So, and he came back. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you, my friend.
Hey,
Blaine.
sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Absolutely, my friend. How's everything?
It's going well. I just had to switch computers to a laptop that's more reliable than the desktop. But I am here, and I'm happy to be here and happy to be with you today.
Yeah. So I was just telling everybody about you a little bit. So many different things that you do and have been doing. My favorite, I think, I'm going to just say it's that you're a habit master. And this, when you wrote this, it was 453 days in a row and counting. I also want to know what the habits are and what day are you up to?
Okay, so today was day 1,715
So
in a
that's an
row.
old writing. I like it.
Yes. And the nice thing is that some of the habits that I have are in apps, that track it for you, right? So I have like a documented streak, sort of say.
Right.
And I really I think similar to you, that habits can be kind of this core, this foundation. And as you build the habits, you start to increase your self-confidence about like what you can do.
Right.
And then also, you can build up something that's substantial. And so I have a framework that really helped me to create this stability and the instantaneousness of creating a new habit. I call it the 21-second habit.
Mm.
21-second habits, how to create a new habit in 21 seconds, not 21 days. And we can kind of unpack that for people. So that's one big thing I think people gravitate toward is creating new habits, kind of exercising their self-discipline a little bit more. And it's super cool. And then the flip side of that is bad habit elimination, which is totally different than new habit creation. But that's also served me well over the last number of years, is to kind of minimize or get rid of the habits that are kind of maybe sabotaging me a little bit.
Mm. One of the things that I've found out is that sometimes it's not necessarily eliminating them, but changing them, right? From a bad to a good one, right?
Yeah, I mean, in bad habit elimination, there's three keys, and that is key number two is you have to have a substitute habit. Otherwise your brain is so powerful, and the neurons tend to gather together. That if you have this issue, it'll keep happening over and over. But having a substitute habit, something that's better. Now sometimes people just upgrade, their habits, from eating candy to eating potato chips. Look, that's still a little better. It's still a little better. But getting to the apple or the banana or something is even better. But yes, a substitute habit is really big, and having a reason why why do you want to get rid of that habit? That gives you some emotional strength and power. I remember, my father-in-law, he was a smoker and he tried to quit a number of times. I watched him try
Mm.
and fail. And then one day he quit cold turkey, never had a cigarette again. And probably he lived maybe 15 more years without a single cigarette. And
Wow.
the reason was he had this powerful why, and that was in the form of grandchildren. So when the
Ah,
grandchildren came, we said, Papa, you can't be around the grandchildren when you're smoking, or like right after you smoke and it smells like smoke. And he said, that's it. And that big enough why got
mm,
him to stop that bad habit. And so when you think about the why you want to stop the bad habit, it's also interesting to then dig deep into understanding emotionally, and knowledge why that bad habit is bad, right? Like if you're going to give up smoking, really study smoking. Why is it bad? What does it do to your lungs? And just get all that data, because that helps you to kind of form that case in your mind. And then the third part, so there's the why, the substitute habit. And then the third part to complete it is to minimize the cues and triggers. Because the bad habit, a lot of time, it's not lack of willpower or self-discipline, it's the environment. And the
yeah,
environment is more powerful, than you are in many cases. So what happens is we're human. We're all human, and so you're going to fall off the wagon, so to speak, and have that cigarette, let's say. But if you do have that cigarette or do that bad habit in that moment, try to figure out what happened. Like, what was the cue? What was the trigger? What got you there? Maybe as you went out to the bar, or you had a bad day. What was it? And then try to minimize those cues and triggers. I talk about potato chips. That was used to be one of my vices. I'd start eating potato chips. I'd eat the whole bag. But once I kind of out of sight, out of mind, once I stop buying potato chips, right, and minimize the cues and triggers, they're not in my house. So I might have a potato chip at a party, but I if I don't buy them, it's I can't have them in my house if they're not here, right?
yeah. I love the fact that you brought up triggers because it's a lot of people may consider I'm going to change my habit, but also they don't plan on what's going to trigger them to go back, right? So that trigger, if we know, okay, this is what's going to trigger me, oh, that's what's going to trigger me, and then have a game plan. When that trigger comes, what do I do? And a lot of people don't do it that way. So all of a sudden, they're like, they smell that cigarette. They're like, oh man, I want one so bad. Or they see that candy. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to have one. Instead of saying, wait a minute, that's a trigger. What must I do now to really facilitate me not going back, right? Not going back to, maybe it's a drug, maybe it's a food, maybe it's anything that we don't want, that we were trying to get rid of. And I love the fact for grandpa to say, my grandchildren, that's my trigger. And his love took over, right? And that's a beautiful story when you think about it. Because you know how many times I've been driving and I see kids in the back seat and the person in the front smoking?
Oof.
And then I'm like, oh man, those kids are suffering. Meanwhile, they love their kids. They love them, but they don't realize the impact of their actions, of their habits, right? And then, like I said, have a game plan, right? So let's talk about, you know, man, so many different things that have made you the person you are, the person that realized, hey, wait a minute, a habit. How do I change them? And even how to create a 21-second habit. How do I start something? One of the things that I do is I realize that we are creatures of habit, right? We may drive the same way. We may put on the same shoe every time. We may put our pants on a different way or the same way. We may put on a jacket the same way, left arm, then right arm. We may do certain things. The minute we wake up, this is the first thing we do, da, 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 da. And so with me, I said, I'm in control, not my habits. So every time when I'm about to do something that I've done several times, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to change it up. So I'm always having that fun game. So I'm like, did I put on my right shoe yesterday? Well, today's going to be the left first. So I always implement that. For me, it's fun because I'm like, what did I do this? No. And then, so even driving to my job, which I don't think I have a job, but when I grow up, I'm going to get one. So it's always like changing it up, right? Changing it up, even though you're going to do the same thing, it may be something you have to do, but can we have a little spice with it, right? Can we change it up to be more exciting? So
Yeah.
what made you, when you were a kid, this is my real story for you. You are who you are because of your childhood experiences. What has triggered you? Who influenced you? So let's talk about you when you were a little guy.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing about what you were just talking about, this kind of variety, this kind of change it up. One of the cool benefits is of that is that you're keeping your brain younger
Mm,
and less susceptible to diseases, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and that because you're activating different parts of your brain. So brain science has come a long way. Like even in the last like 5 years, the
right.
ability for science to be able to study your brain and the neurons and what happens and when you have a thought. They can even measure when you have a thought, and how that looks, kind of on a screen. But in any case, if the listeners will do that, change it up. That is so good for the plasticity of your brain. And I like to tell people, I brush my teeth with my right hand, but you know what, tonight I'm going to do it with the left hand. And it's awkward at first. It's awkward at first. But over time, you get really good at it. Like I switched the hand that I use the mouse on my computer, and I'm like, I'll never get good with my left hand. But it was just really a few hours of using that, and I started getting better kind of rapidly. So
Mm,
so anyway, that's really good. So back to me and my childhood.
yes.
I think I had a couple um, moments of dawning comprehension. Uh,
Mm,
and so for me, one of those came actually with my own kids. And so I went to Purdue University. I got a degree in computer science there, and I actually met my wife there, which was awesome. We've been
that's
married
cool.
30 years, so that's a good thing. But anyway, I had come back. I was working as a software engineer, and I was on a long business trip. And I came back from this business trip, and my son Bo was kind of like giving me the cold shoulder. And I said, "Hey Beth, what's wrong with Bo? Like, why is he giving me the cold shoulder?" She says, "Well, you were gone so long, he kind of forgot who you were." And like
Mm,
that like emotionally, that hit me hard. And then I remembered when I was a kid, both my parents worked. So I came into the empty house. I have an older brother. A lot of times he wasn't there, and I don't know. I felt like a little scared, like coming into the house, all by myself, you know.
mm,
And so that all those memories of that kind of came flooding back to me that night. And I made what I call a clarifying decision. And that night I said, no matter what it takes, I'm going to be a work from home dad. So I started a couple of businesses that year. It took me like a year because my wife, we're pretty conservative. So she's like, well, they didn't call it a side hustle back then, but she's like, if your
right.
side hustle is making as much or more than your regular job and we save up enough money, you can quit your job. So it took me a year, but we did that. And
Mm.
that was 27 years ago. So I,
Oh, wow.
I became this work from home dad, and now the kids are out of the nest. They're 29 and 27. But anyway, that what that did is that set me up to work from home, to be very efficient. And I set up businesses that had no daily operations. So it gave me the opportunity to dive deep and figure out like who is Blaine? What does he really want? And I realized in the end, I think God's put me on the planet to help people take control of their lives by taking control of themselves, something I call self-fluence. It's kind of like the power you already have to influence yourself. You don't need anything new. You already know how to do it. We were talking about habits earlier. You're a habit master. You are, like you said, we are creatures of habit, but you already know how to do it. And a lot of times, if I'm at a big workshop, I'll ask people, if you brushed your teeth in the last 24 hours, raise your hand. And all the hands go up. Maybe there's a denture or two in there, but most of the hands go up. And people, I said, when's the last time? How long in a row have you done brushing your teeth? And people are like, years, decades. And I said, you're already a habit master. You already know how to do it, right? And so I tell a story about my wife. she used to, glad this is past tense, she used to have nearly daily migraine headaches.
Mm.
And so the doctors said, look, you got to keep this headache log. And it was like extensive. It was like, what do you eat? What are the triggers? What is the weather? What is the barometric pressure? Like weird stuff. And so she'd do it for a couple of days and then she'd lose it
Mm.
or forget to do it, and then she'd have a migraine and I'd ask her about it. That was not good. But then one day she was brushing her teeth. And this is kind of the genesis of the 21-second habit, is I noticed that she did that without fail. She brushes for 2 minutes, just like the dentists say, in the
Right, right.
morning, at night. And so I said, look, let's take the headache log, put the toothbrush and the toothpaste on top of it. And when you're brushing your teeth for those 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes at night, just fill it out. Just what you remember. Maybe you look up, on your phone what the barometric pressure is, but do that. And she went from can't do it for more than 2-3 days and then losing the log to 90 days in a row
Mm.
without missing a day and putting that log together. And that helped the doctors. And now she might have a migraine headache once every couple months. But
Wow.
that key there is habit linking, right? So the first key to creating a new habit is linking it to an existing habit that you already have. Right. And so the second, that's one key. The second key to it is the key that actually helped me with my 1700 days habit. And what I did is when I saw her do that, we did that. I said, okay, what new habits do I want? And I realized I wanted 2 new habits that I would do every day. And then I realized the mornings are better. Like the day can get away from me. So I better do it first thing in the morning. And then I thought to myself, habit link, what do I do every morning? No willpower required. And it's this, it's the smartphone. And
Mm.
so every morning, without fail, at some point, typically first thing, I open my phone. And
Yeah.
so what I did is I moved all the apps off the home page of my phone, and I just put these 2 apps that I wanted to do. One was a Bible app, and another was I wanted to take a mind shower every day. I wanted to, just like I wash my body physically in the shower, I wanted to wash the head trash out of my mind every single morning. And so I used an app called Headspace for that. There's a bunch of cool apps for that,
Mm.
but that's the one I use. And so what I did is when I opened my phone, I said, look, I have to do these 2 apps before I can touch anything else. And this is where the second key to the 21 seconds. So habit linking is one. The second key is to surf the urge to want to do something else. And so when I open my phone, I've got all these little circles that, I've got text messages. My son lives in Denmark. He texts during the night a lot of times. I've got orders that have come in. I've got news. I've got social media. I mean, the whole world is just, screaming for Blaine to check in with them.
Yeah.
And so I surf that urge and I say, I can't do any of that until I do these 2 apps. Now, I like a 10-minute mind shower, but if I only have 2 or 3 minutes, I'll do a quick 2 or 3 minute one, right? But I'm making sure that happens every single day. And so for the last 1,715 days, I've opened that phone at some
Mm.
point during the day. And when I do for the first time, I do those 2 things. And so that's really helped me. So the third key, so the 3 keys, so there's the habit linking, then there's surfing the urge to want to do something. And then the third part is getting leverage on yourself. And that can be in a number of ways. Some people use rewards like, hey, if I keep this new habit for a week, I'll buy that book I want. Some people use the stick. Hey, if I don't do this new habit, then, my wife Beth can make me do some chore that she doesn't want to do, that I don't like, washing out the garbage cans, the big garbage cans. And then if she really wants to make sure I do it, she says, if you don't do that, you have to wash the neighbor's garbage cans on the side. You touch his cans, he's coming after you. Anyway, you can have fun with it. And the
Mm.
leverage also, once you get about 3 or 4 days, you don't want to break that chain and it becomes powerful. Right now, me, at 1,700 days, I really don't want to break that chain. But it becomes powerful to get that. And it's simple to do, right? I just had someone the other day, they said, Blaine, I want to do next day planning. I'm a chief results officer guy. I always talk about planning your day, never let a day end without planning the next one. But she wasn't doing that. And so I said, look, Ann, what do you do first thing in the morning? No willpower required. She says, I make a cup of coffee. I have coffee every morning. I said,
Mm.
great. Take a pad of paper and a pen, put it by the coffee maker. And then when you wake up, if you don't have a plan, make the coffee, smell the coffee, get their urge to drink that coffee up really high, and then surf that urge to at least start the plan. Now you can make the plan while you drink the coffee, but you got to start the plan before you
Yes.
have a sip of that coffee. And now she's able to do that, easily, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of using your brain. Everything you need is within reach. You're already doing it, and you can master it. And many times, it's just mastering things you already know how to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. By the way, Timmy Gallagher joined us and he said, yep. And neurons that fire together work together, right? So, or neurons that fire together
Yeah.
work together,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And, I love the fact that you had this young lady from a habit. You didn't tell her to change it. You asked her to add to it. So
Right.
you created a habit from an existing habit. You
Right. Have
you
it
kind
linked.
of piggybacked, right?
Yeah.
I love that idea because if you think about it, if you're already doing it, we're just going to add something to it, right? It's a beautiful way of putting it together, right? Instead of like, oh, I'll do it later. No, do it while you're doing this other thing, whatever that other thing is, because you're going to do it without thinking. And your wife was doing it because she was brushing her teeth and she figured that out as well.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and there's so many things you can link to, things that you do once a day, multiple times a day, and it's interesting that, even like some people, they'll link things to, stopping at a traffic light, and that happens. They don't have to think about stopping at a traffic light. They stop, and when they do, they link that to, say, deep breathing or a
right.
quick little meditation or a quick little affirmation, and so there's so many things that happen, daily, weekly, monthly, right? That you
Mhm.
can link to. So it's a wide range of things. And then, yeah, no willpower required, which is nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So, who would you say were your biggest influencers growing up when you were a little guy?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a little guy, my dad was a big influence on me. He worked in New York City. We lived in New Jersey, and that's where really he was working in, a computer related field. And then he brought me in to work, and I got to see the computers and play on some early computers and things like that. So that really kind of set me up for my first part of my career. Uh, and then also I had an uncle. So my uncle Cliffy, he owned a roller rink, uh,
Oh.
and I got to see, how much fun he had running that, and then also, kind of running a business,
Mm.
and so that started to plant some seeds for me to, want to, have some kind of a business of my own, and so I always had that as I was growing up, that kind of desire to do that. And when I was younger, we lived on a street called Bailey Hollow Road, and I created this thing called the Bailey Boys, and I made flyers to do like odd jobs, right? And cut lawns and do painting and stuff like that. But it was a collection of people, and I would gather up other kids when the job was bigger than beyond what just I could do. I was just employing the other kids and helping them make a little summer money as well. So those, I have some of those kind of early memories, of that. But it really, for me, it wasn't until I didn't kind of like really fully wake up, consciously, I think, until I went to college. And for me, college was the big change. And it was funny, maybe like some of the listeners, and like I know you are a seeker, like a seeker of knowledge. And one day I was in college, and I saw this ad for an audio cassette tape. So kind of dating myself. This is back in the 80s. I saw this ad for an abridged reading of a book called Think and Grow Rich, and it
Mm.
was read by Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale actually ended up becoming a kind of a mentor of me through his audio programs. But anyway, I sent away for that. I listened to the tape, then I read the book, and I was like, yeah, what you think about, you bring about, and there's like a methodology to that.
Mm.
The neurons that fire together wire together, and your dominant thought equals dominant behavior, and that opened the door for me, really, for the rest of my life. And that was kind of another moment of dawning comprehension, was to start to realize the power that I had, in my mind, And that led me to my number one mentor in life and business, is Jim Rohn. I don't know if have you heard of Jim Rohn
Oh,
before?
without a doubt.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So
Huge, huge
yeah, I
mentor.
got to share the stage with him a few times, and got to know him, and he became a really big mentor. And one night, within this like 5 minute span, he just delivered so much value. And one of the things he says, it's not what happens that determines your life future. It's what you do about what happens.
Mm,
And so then I started to like worry less and realize, yeah, life is going to throw any kind of circumstance at me, but where I end up is not the circumstances of life. It's how I respond to those
yeah.
circumstances. And that, I don't know, that brought me some comfort, and realizing that, like Jim would say, we're all in a little sailboat, and the blowing of the wind, happens to everybody, but it's the set of the sail, which he said is your thinking, that determine kind of where you end up in life. And so that guided me pretty well.
Yeah, that's awesome. The fact that, you understood, and the fact that you were entrepreneur at such an early age, that's pretty cool. I like that. Getting, and the fact that you call it the Bailey Boys,
Yeah.
right? That's pretty cool. When we think about, our early influencers, the things that we did when we were kids, it kind of like, if you reflect back, you're like, that's why I do what I do, or that's why I have this habit. Maybe you hung out with kids who, not you personally, but maybe they did drugs, or they smoked, or they were troublemakers, or they went to the library. So it depends. Everybody, it's truly, it is the people that are around you that influence your actions, right? And you talked about what Jim Rohn told you, is that it's not what's happening, it's how you interpret it and the actions you take. Your Not necessarily your necessarily triggers even then, but it's how you act upon it, right? It's your response, right? Because if it's a knee jerk reaction, is that really a response that you wanted, or is that just, oh, you didn't think about it? But when you respond, I think you have a little bit of a time to think about, is this the way I want to act with this circumstance? How do I want to handle it, right? So it's different between a knee jerk reaction or a response. And I love that. And I think that brings a lot of value to anybody listening, is like, before you do that quick reaction, is that really, really what you want to do, right?
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's kind of what it kind of makes us different than all the other animals running around on the planet, is a lot of that instinctive stuff where the animal just does it and doesn't have that gap. Like you talk, I
Right.
love that concept of this gap between kind of stimulus and response. And as human beings with our mind, we can open that gap and make it bigger and bigger, so that yeah, is that the response I want? You create more time, and the ability to kind of control that response. I think that's a huge point, and a great one.
Yeah, yeah. So you've done a lot. You decided from that trip that you took that your son didn't
Yeah,
want to be near you, because he's
yeah,
like, who is that guy?
yeah,
Right? And you decided to, and your wife, brilliant, she said, if you make enough money, yeah, this side hustle of yours is going to pay off, right? But then you became a TEDx speaker. How did you do that? And even why? Why did you want to do it? There's a lot of speakers that I know that never want to do the TEDx because they're limited on time, right? And these are speakers who just like to talk and talk and talk and talk. And so I think I love the TEDx concept, because you truly have to take, and the other day I had a conversation. I have a new show, it's called New Tip Daily, and I was talking about your 30-second speech, right? Where that's that elevator pitch or speech, and you're taking a huge concept and you're breaking it down to 18 minutes. And a lot of people are terrified about that, because now every word counts. What made you decide, and even how did you go about getting into a TEDx conversation, or not even talking with them, but even having them accept you and say, we love what you have, let's put you on stage?
Yeah, so the time didn't bother me. I was like, "Hey, shorter's better," and I
Yeah,
think
right.
mine was either 14 minutes or 12. You could go up to 18.
Okay.
Mine was in the 12 to 14 range. But what was harder for me was that in the TEDx, they put you on a red dot. There's like this red dot. There's a carpet. It's a circle, right? It's a circle on the stage, and you have to stay inside. Now, my mother's maiden name is Nazaro, so I'm an Italian. I like to talk with my hands. I like to walk around, move around, and that was more terrifying. It was like I have to stay in this little spot, this little dot. So anyway, but for me, is that what overcame any kind of trepidation about it was this fact of that you get this ability to share an idea that's going to help somebody else. And
Mm,
whenever I get nervous or something like that, I know that if I'm nervous about something, speaking, let's say, that it's me thinking about me, like how am I going to look, and I could look like an idiot, or I could say the wrong thing, or I might not know what to say, but all that is about me. And so the minute that I take that and shift it towards the audience and say, look, they're not going to remember if I flub something, or even if I do, then I gave them a good memory, right? Like, how can I serve other people? And if I stay kind of in the serving mode, not a selling mode, in a serving mode, then I'm not as nervous. Like, I'm here to serve, right? And so for me, I wanted to, kind of get on that stage to share a big idea. So TEDx is a TED, and TEDx is when you have one idea, one big idea worth sharing. So your talk is about just one thing, which is kind of cool, I think. And I was the president of the Arizona Marketing Association, and so we had a monthly meeting, and it was recorded, and I would teach each month. And one of the members, actually, submitted me and said, "Hey, there's this TEDx talk, and I put your name in for it." So then they asked me for an example of my speaking. Like, do you have a video of you speaking? And I go, yeah, I have a lot of them, from doing these presentations. And so I sent them that video, and I was accepted. And, the thing people need to realize is if you have that goal to be a TEDx speaker, there are, hundreds and hundreds of TEDx's all over the world, probably 1,000,
right.
at any one time, and they're done in different cities. I'm in the Phoenix area, and so we probably have 20 different TEDx's every year. The university will do one. Some people have them in certain cities. Some clubs will do it, and so there's a lot of opportunity, and many of them have an open registration. Where you can Google that, and you can see, oh, here's a TEDx, and they have this kind of call for speakers, and that's where you would just submit your idea and a little video, and then hopefully you're chosen. So once you are chosen, I was chosen. They give you a coach, which is nice. You have this person who's like an organizer for it, but also your coach. So they're working on, okay, you got to stand this one idea, and how are you going to tie it in with everybody, and how are you going to get them to actively participate? And so it was great to have that. And I did mine. What I talked about earlier, YTABA, is an acronym for what you think about, you bring about. That thing that Think and Grow Rich kind of taught me in college, that became a big theme in my life. And so I tell the story about my father's passing, which is not fun.
Mm.
I start off there. They said, you're going to have to get emotional. I'm like, I don't like to get emotional. Like, we're going to have to do it here. So I had to do that story, but it's tied with something that was happier, which was the birth of my son. So that was fun. But I talk about overcoming my father's kind of untimely death. That he died of something called sudden death heart attack. So he didn't even know he was sick, and
Mm,
he's only 59 years old. And anyway, so but through this concept of Waiteba, what you think about, you bring about. I chose to be better rather than bitter, and work my way out of it. But then the audience, yeah, we interact with the audience, and they get these cards, and we talked about how your mind works, and how it's kind of like a garden. And are you planting good stuff, bad stuff, or nothing? If you plant nothing,
right.
you get weeds, which sometimes can even be worse. But I talked about that, and in the end, we talked about a very kind of cool, elegant, simple way to take control of your thoughts by reminding yourself of what you want to bring about in your life, 100 times a day without having to think about it. So,
Mhm.
and if people want that, I can direct people to where they could see that talk.
Absolutely. You know, one of the things, if you have a second, go ahead and in the private chat, put any links that you want me to put up for people to take a look at, and I'll put them up on the screen as well. You know, one of the things that is very intriguing when I talk to anybody um, who has a lot of plates spinning, right, if you will, is the fact that we can be better with one thing. And you talked about that. One thing at a time, right? Because if you think about, we can only truly think about one thing at a time. We may have a million thoughts a day, but each thought has its own time, right? And I love the fact that you brought up Think and Grow Rich. I mean, I've read that book so many times. It has so many great, valuable lessons, and every single time it makes me think differently, right? That's why I journal a lot. And in my journals, I write it, then I put it in a different journal because the thought's a little bit different or I see it differently. And then I come back a couple of days later and then I rewrite it in a third book, or I highlight it and then write it in a third book because the concepts will change slightly. And then I'll put it in another book, a fourth book. And I think if I were to go back to the many books I have written, I probably would even create a fifth book because I'm like, my thoughts have changed because we evolve daily, don't we? And that's one of the beauties that I can see that you have. You're evolving. I love the 21-second shift to really create a new habit or change a habit. Because you may have a great habit that served you 10 years ago. Is it serving you today? Why are you still doing it? You know, we hear about habits that people are doing because they were told to do, right? Like everybody's heard the story of the mom cooking the ham and cutting off the ends and cooked it that way. We've all heard that story, but it's only because that's what she was told. But when we come back to the source, it was because the pan was too big for great grandma. And oh, that's why she cut the hams,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So when we think about a habit, is I think, in order for it to stick, it should make sense. And like you said, your why. And then also, does it work? Does it work for you and what you're trying to accomplish? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, one side, the cool thing I talked about brain science, one of the cool things is that now they can study your brain in such detail. They have noticed that the neurons, that fire together, wire together, and it does take about 21 days for you initially to form the neurological pathways,
Mm,
of the new habit, but it takes 63 days for those to be able to stand on their own. So just
mhm.
know that these things, are going to take some time, whether you're substituting habit and eliminating bad ones or starting new ones. Neurologically, it's going to take a little time for you, to be able to kind of get to that point where it's fully wired in, right? And so I think that's key for people to understand, in regards to that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So talk to us about the difference that you found once you started staying at home, right? You worked from your home, you created businesses, or and then I want to know what businesses they were also, right? Your side hustles, which truly impacted your relationship with your son, right? And then when you did that, you had another child, right? So you
Yeah.
have two kids, right? Both boys, girls. What do we
No,
have?
the younger one is a girl, and they're 19 months apart. So
Mm.
they were, it was, I don't know. I thought it was easier once we had two, but uh, maybe my wife would say something different. But anyway, yes. So we got a boy and a girl.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So how was the impact? Would you say so much different when you started being home more?
Yeah, yeah, it was a big impact. It was, that was probably the toughest year on our marriage from, like, a time standpoint, and, I was really driving to get free, right? Uh,
Mm.
and it was a very, so that was probably our hardest time in our marriage was that year because I basically had my 50-hour-a-week job. We had the one-year-old, and then, he was going on 2, and then we have another child coming, at the end of that year, we know we have another child coming. So it was a little crazy in that time, but I was driven. I was driven
Mm.
emotionally by this. Do I want my child to know me or not? Right? And it was very and different things for different people. But you're going to have some core desires planted deep inside you, right? And those core desires, you're going to feel energized when you get in alignment with your true purpose, right? And so as I discovered this more and more, and got freer and freer from kind of a job. I mean, you were talking about that transition. I mean, the first thing was I went from having to drive to my job and be there. It was probably more than 50 hours a week if I put in commute time and all that. And all
Right.
of a sudden, all that was gone. And it was interesting that in that first year, I tripled the amount of money, kind of take home profit that I had in my life because I freed myself up, from kind of, from a job, kind of working for somebody else.
Right.
And what I did that year is I started two different companies. One was with a friend, and I was in the computer field, software engineer was my degree, and we knew a bunch of other software engineers. So this friend of mine and I, we started a company to help them get jobs.
Mm.
And so we helped them get jobs, and in some of the jobs, we became their employer, and then we paid them, and then they were bigger companies like Honeywell and Raytheon, these bigger kind of software development type companies. They would pay us a certain amount per hour, and then we would pay the person who was our employee, right? And we'd make a little bit of a spread there.
Right.
So that was one, and the other one was kind of a bizarre business. I've always kind of been into health, and it was selling a very unique edible blue green algae,
Mm.
from a lake in Klamath Falls, Oregon, of all places.
Wow.
But anyway, so it was a very unique kind of thing. But those were the businesses that kind of ended up launching me, into being my own boss, from home. And then, like you said this earlier, that the people you're around influence you. And some of them could be, for bad habits. Some could be in good ways, like a mentor, but some could also be in negative ways. And I
Mhm.
think parenting, being, well, hopefully not too much of the helicopter parent, but being in their lives so much that we realized that the friend network was the key, right?
Mm.
And getting them in with good friends, and really monitoring that part of it early on, right? So and a lot of times, since I'm working from home, if they have friends over, I'm there, right?
Right.
Or if they're going to go on some kind of a play date or something like that, I can just go and be there, or hang out, at least for a while, and make sure everything's going well. And I think that played a big difference. Then being able to do stuff with them in sports, and being able to be their coach, and at first in soccer, then later in tennis, just being really involved in with their lives. But then also I got to prepare them to go out on their own. So
Mhm.
so that was kind of a bit of a transition, for me, especially when our son started driving and we lost all this windshield time. Like, we had a lot of windshield time, to school and to sports and all that stuff. So when we lost that, that was like big transition number one. And then when they went away to college, that was kind of
Mhm.
transition number two. But now the nice thing is that the kids are out of the nest, and I'm still working from home with a high degree of discretionary time so I can, I can really pour into other people and stay on what I feel is my path. A lot of times my wife and I, we have a thing called the Powerball test. And we say, if you won the Powerball last weekend, would you still do what you're doing? Right? That tells you if it passes the Powerball test.
Mhm.
And what I do does. Like if I won last week the Powerball, I would still be here with you, doing this podcast live stream. Now we may be giving away cars, and it might have been wild time,
Right,
but
right.
I would still do it because that's why I feel like I'm here. And it's not really a job as much as a kind of a calling, to help people take control of their lives by taking control of themselves. Something I call personal implementation, getting
Mm,
yourself to do the things that you know you should do, but you're not doing most of
right.
the time is what we work on.
I love it. I love it. And I love the Powerball because I've been asked that question 1,000 times over. Would you still do the same things? I'm like, yes. I wouldn't
Yeah,
change. This is who I am, right?
yep. Yeah. The
Plus, I
other,
would be bored. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, maybe you travel a little bit more and just like that, and maybe contribute a little bit more than you already contribute, but you're still the same person. What winds up happening for all those people, and there's like 80% of people who become lotto or mega or
right,
whatever, 80% of them go broke afterwards. And the reason is they stop being who they were. That's the
right.
only reason. That's the only reason I can see.
Yeah, and there's in a workshop setting, we talk about the Powerball lottery, right? We talk about everybody winning it. We close our eyes and we envision it, and then we say, okay, now it's a year later after you won the Powerball, and let's say you won, it's $500 million. You pay the taxes, but then for that year, you do all the stuff you want to do: buy the mansions, do the travel, get your kids set up with the trust funds. You do everything you want to do, and it's a year later, and you wake up, you still have $100 million in the bank and you can do whatever you want, unlimited resources. What would you do?
Mm,
And nearly 100% of the people in that room, and we go through an exercise where they write it out, is they say, I would help people blank. Now the blank is different for everybody,
right.
but they all say when they had unlimited resources, I would help people blank. Now the blank is typically based on what has happened in their life, right? Like I would help people take control of their lives by taking control of themselves, but other people would have different things, different answers, but it all came back to serving other people, right? And at the end of life, I studied people at the end of their life. What did they say? And they always only had two things. Everything, like, what did you want more? What do you wish you did differently? And it all came down to just two items. And one was, I wish I had more memorable moments with the people I love.
Hmm.
Memorable moments with, now the people they love. When I dig a little deeper, it is family and friends, but it also was staff at a company they worked with for a long time,
Mm,
or maybe even peers in the where they worked,
right.
in the industry they worked with. But they had those people. They wish you had more memorable moments with the people they love. And then the second thing was, I wish I had more impact with what I had learned. So it's all about, connection, relationships, memorable moments with people you love, and about
Hmm.
impact, about sharing, your journey in such a way that it serves another person.
Yeah, yeah. And that is the truth, right? Because a lot of people think they need a lot of money to help others. And
Right.
that's where they lose it. Because you don't need, listen, I've seen poor people be more helpful than people who have a lot of wealth
Sure. Yep.
because they have empathy. They know what it's like. So a lot of times people think if I had this, I can help other people. You can help other people now. You don't need the wealth. All you need is a hand. You need to be there to comfort somebody. Maybe help out a soup kitchen. Maybe do something where you make an impact. You don't have to be rich. And if, by the way, if you're rich, you should be doing that, right?
Yeah.
You should be doing that anyway, because there's a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who, listen, all these celebrities or even these athletes who are getting $80 million for 5 years, $300 million for whatever, and they barely do any charity work. And I'm like, or maybe they're doing it silently, but I hope that, their contract is not just about the money, but it's about what they can do with the money. And one of the things that even in Think and Grow Rich is because it says it's not the money, it's what you can do. And money's not evil. You can do evil things with money, but you can do amazing and great things with money too. So let's
Yeah.
take the higher road and do amazing things if you have the money. But if you don't have the money, listen, I believe in giving because the rewards will come back. And if it's not a financial reward, it's that feeling we get in our heart, right? I
Yeah.
love the fact that one of your apps, and that you've been doing for over 1,700 days, is something based on faith. I love that. And I agree with you 100%. And that's something that, gratitude, faith, belief in something bigger than us. I think that's huge. And I applaud you for that. And let me ask you a question. So those are the two apps that you go to every day without fail. First two things that you do. Maybe you'll touch upon other ones. But then also let me ask you, your two companies, and it seems like two is a good number for you. Your two companies you started with, you still have them, or you moved on to others?
Yeah. So the first company, the software development kind of placement one, I ended up selling my part of that business to
Mm,
my friend, and he went on and now he's done that business for like 30 years. Now it's changed
mm,
and he's morphed it and became more of what
yeah,
his vision was for it. But he's still in business today.
mm,
And they're still so I'm not in it. And then that the algae, they're still pulling that algae out of that Klamath Lake, and people are still eating that
wow,
blue green algae. But again, I sold that. I sold that business off as kind of figured out who I was. And in 2009, I started a company called Self-Fluence, the art and science of influencing yourself. And that's my real calling. And
mm,
I work with business owners mostly, but then I also work with collections of business owners that are together in what's called a mastermind group. So someone will create a mastermind group, let's say of attorneys or dentists. Those are my two biggest ones, and they'll be helping them collectively. They're kind of helping each other, and
yeah,
I'm coming in there to help them get results on a weekly basis. I set up little meetings, and I have a framework to help them get results, get progress every single week. And
mm.
that is where some of them said, "Hey, you're like the chief results officer for us." And I said, "Hey, I like that chief results officer. That's who I want to be." And so I went to the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office, and I registered that, and I was granted that the
That's
R
pretty
with a
cool.
circle, the registered trademark, which is a little more powerful than just the TM. So I have the R with a circle. That's why I can say I'm America's only chief results officer. But anyway, that's really, I'm going to do this kind of stuff for the rest of my life.
Mm,
It's kind of what I feel wired to do.
yeah.
So yeah.
I love it. I love it. When we think about results, right? It's the actions, isn't it? It's the
Yeah.
actions that we take that are going to give us results or not, right?
Yeah.
It's a yes to something and a no to something else. It's automatic, right? When we say one to the one, we say yes to a no or no to a yes. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it's kind of the decision and the doing. Like, so the
Mhm.
decision is like the key bridge to action, right? But then there's that famous story, three birds are sitting on a tree limb and one decides to fly away. How many birds are on the tree limb? Still three, because the one made the decision, but they didn't do the flying, right?
Yeah.
So it's the decision and the doing. So the decision, key bridge to action, but then like you said, it's the doing, it's the implementation. And I'd rather that you decide promptly and begin moving, even if it's in the wrong direction. Because if
Mm,
you're moving in the wrong direction, now you can steer yourself, right? You can't steer a parked car. You got to
yeah.
be moving, right? So once you get moving, even if it's the wrong direction, I prefer that over not moving at all. But then you can kind of adjust. But yes, it's in the doing, right? And most people don't need more information. Information is not transformation, right?
Mhm.
Implementation and
That's
doing,
everything.
that's where it happens, right? And that's, people kind of need less information and more implementation, I think.
Yeah, that's why, I love that saying of knowledge is not power, eh,
Right,
right?
right, right. You got to,
Applied knowledge, that's
yes,
your power. There
yeah.
it is.
We're cut from the same mold. We're finishing each other's sentences. That's good.
Nice, nice. Listen, I'm loving this connection. I'm loving, everything that you have done with your life because you're showing people that your why should be why you do things, right? Don't get me wrong, a lot of us need to have a job in order to put food on the table, but you can still, on your side hustle, figure out why you need to do something different. Now, maybe not everybody can stay home, but when you do go to that job or you do run that company, why are you running that company? Why are you going to that job? Some people will never be able to have their own business, but they can be great at a business when they help someone else, right? So determine that why. I think that's huge. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that with us too.
Yeah, yeah, and bring that to you. Bring that into your daily life, whatever that is.
Mhm,
Like if you do that Powerball test, you say, "Hey, I'd like to help people do X," right? Well, how can you start doing that right away, right?
mhm,
And so when I was working in my regular job, I was the person that was reading the self-help books and talking to people and helping them, right? Wherever I was, right? Kind
mhm.
of grow wherever you're planted, so to speak.
Yeah,
And you've
yeah,
got gifts and you got talents, whoever you are, you've got stuff that naturally you feel like doing, and you're good at it, right? So yeah, explore those talents and gifts, and then let them grow, wherever you are, and then wherever you are, be there. Jim Rohn taught me that wherever you are, be there. So if you're at work, be at work. If you're at home, be at home. And focus in and kind of bloom where planted is what I like to say.
yeah, yeah. Because wherever you go, there you are.
That's right. That's the person who's always going to be with you. Yes.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of your shadow. It's actually there to help you.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I love all the advice. I love all the ideas and the concepts that you're bringing forth. Do me a favor, don't go away, but we are going to say goodbye to everybody. Amazing, amazing conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. And let me ask you, would you be willing to do another TEDx talk?
Uh, yeah, I think I would if the stage, and I like to do things that are new. So if the
Right.
stage and the venue and things were maybe different from my last one, I'm pretty sure I could come up with another, idea worth sharing, so to speak. And I do, some of these mastermind groups I work with, they have a newsletter. So every month I like this natural deadline. Like I have to
Mm,
write a new article for their newsletter every single month, and that gives me a little bit of a platform to say, another what's a big idea worth sharing. So I almost kind of get to do like a little mini TEDx talk in written form, every single month. So I really have enjoyed that. And I just yesterday I counted, I have 70 months of those articles, that I've written, and that's been helpful for me to kind of get express myself through that vehicle.
yeah. And I put it up on the screen for everybody to go take a look. It's BlaineTEDx.com. It's BlaineTEDx.com. Everybody go check it out. And I know that once we look at it, we're all going to want you to do another one.
There we go. There we
Great
go.
concepts, great ideas. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Have an amazing and blessed day, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. And I'll leave you with this
Yes.
bad news. The bad news is time flies. The good news, you're the pilot. So pilot
Mm,
well, my friends. Pilot well.
I love that. Great tip. All right. Enjoy.